Om Sadashiva-Samarambham Shankaracharya-Madhyamam Asmadacharya-Paryantam Vande Guru-Paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Bharvavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so we are going to mantra number 3 of the Tritiya Mundaka Pratham Khanda, 313. So we will chant Yada Pashyaf Pashyate Rukmavarnam
Yada pashyate rupvarnam
Kartaram Isham Purusham Brahmayonim
Kartaram isham purusham brahmayonim
Kada Vidwan Punya Pape Vidhuya
Tada vidvan punya pape vidya
Niranjanah Paramam Samyam Upayati.
Niranjana
paramam samya upaiti.
Okay, so Yada Pasyaha Pashyate. So the Visarga at the end of the Pashyaha means it's a subject. Yada Pashyaha, when the seer. Okay. So when the seer sees, when this Pashyaha, and Shankara very carefully says, Pashyaha means Vidvan Sadhaka, the one who is a intelligent, discriminative inquirer, seeker. That is meant by Pashyaha. And Yada Pashyate, when that person sees. So when you say Vidwan, you have to automatically recall Tattva Bodha. He is Sadhana, Yathrushtaya, Sampanna, Adhikari. That is the meaning of Vidwan. The person who has gone through Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and is now ready for Jnanam and is now steady. So when such a person, such a Vidwan he sees, what does he see? Shruti doesn't say, the mantra doesn't say. So we have to supply. What does he see?
He understands his higher nature.
He understands his real nature. He sees himself. You have to always say he sees himself, right? You are in Upanishads now. So you can't say he is seeing the Atma. He is seeing himself as what? As the Sakshi Atma. And what exactly is that Sakshi Atma? A description follows. Rukma Varna Purushaha. Rukma Varna Purusham. That shining Purusha. Rukma Varnam means shining like gold. So that self shining like gold is, why do we use the word shining like gold? Because gold, the nature of gold is shining. If you see a very dirty, golden ornament, what is required to make the ornament shine? You don't have to, add any shine separately. So when you say that, very often we say we give the gold for polishing, right? Gold ornaments are given for polishing to the goldsmith. So you have to note here that when the gold is polished, there is no shine being added. The shine is already there. What is being done is that the impurity is being removed. The polishing action, it removes the impurity, and then what happens? The natural shine of the gold shows. So that is what is meant by, that is why the word Rukma Varnam is used. That Atma, which is naturally self-effulgent, is not seen because of the Maya veil over your eyes. And when you polish, and that Maya veil comes off, then the natural shine of the Atma is revealed. And Shankara adds here that you have to also say Nityam. The shine is not only natural, it is also Nityam. And when you see that, what do you see actually? Kartaram Isham. One sees, so here Kartaram Isham is a very, very nice word. Kartaram means the Karta. Isham means the Lord. Now, the point is, he is seeing himself as the Lord who is the creator. And Kartaram here has to be very carefully understood as Jagat Kartaram, right? Because remember that in the Jagat Kartaram status, as the creator of Jagat, Ishvara does not perform or create because of Papa Punyam. There is no Ajnanam involved over there. Ishvara does not do it to fulfill any of his desires. So there is no Ajnanam involved. And that is why we said earlier that Ishvara is Sarvavit and Sarvajna. And therefore, even when he knows that he is Sarvavit and Sarvajna, when he creates, the idea being conveyed was conveyed by Krishna also. Tasya kartaram apimam vidhi akartaram avyayam. Even though I am the creator of the universe, vidhi akartaram avyayam. Know that I am unchanging and I am a akarta. That idea is being conveyed here again, that even when Ishvara creates, he creates without kartrutvam. And Isham Pashyati, this Shankara does not comment upon this, except to say that this Ishaha is not subject to samsara. And to understand this word Kartaram Isham we have to look at. When you say Karta, you are normally implying Kartrutvam, right? The doership. And doership is always in Vyavaharika. But when you say Isha, you are implying Paramarthika. So the word Karta and Isha, they can have different meanings when you look at them in two different orders of reality. So Karta Isham is one compound word, but its basis is the two orders of reality, Vyavaharika Satyam and Paramarthika Satyam. And if you recognize both as existing, if you recognize that Vyavaharika is also existing and Paramarthika is also existing, then these two words are different. One is a Karta and one is a Akarta Ishvara. But in this mantra, they are being used together. Karta and Isham is one compound word. And in using it together, what is happening? You are recognizing that the Vyavaharika is Mithya and doesn't really exist. And therefore, the Paramarthika usage overcomes the Vyavaharika usage. And Karta and Isham becomes Paramarthika only. So to give an example, when you say bangle is gold, when you recognize that there is nothing but the gold over there, and bangle is only Namarupa, so the bangle is swallowed up in the wake of the gold knowledge. The bangle is Vyavaharika, the gold is Paramarthika. The Paramarthika overcomes, Paramarthika meaning of gold, the Vastu, it overcomes the Vyavaharika meaning of bangle, the instrument, the ornament. And therefore the Mithya Karta in the Kartara Isham disappears when I know that Isham is Paramarthika. Okay, so that's the meaning of a very important meaning which we must see over here. And Purusham. Purusham has the meaning of Purayati Sarvam iti Purusham, that we have seen before, that which pervades everything, that is called a Purushaha. And what kind of Purusha? Pervading everything is fine, but what addition is there? So the mantra says Brahma Yonim. Okay. And you say Brahma Yonim, again, we have discussed this in Gita also. You must remember that Brahma Yonim can be the Yoni for the Jagat. the womb for the universe, the womb from which the universe comes. And therefore it can be Saguna Brahman, Hiranyagarbha, Lord Brahmaji. Right? That is one meaning. And you can take it as Nirguna Brahman, which is the source for everything. Ultimately, Saguna Brahman cannot be there without Nirguna Brahman. So Nirguna Brahman can be taken as the ultimate source. In either way, whichever way you look at it, the meaning is the same. This Purusham, which pervades everything, is the ultimate source of everything. And once you know this Purusham properly, as what? As I myself, tada. Third line, first word, tada. When that knowledge arises, then Vidwan, the person who has understood, the jnani now, what happens? Punya pape vidhuyaha. So vidhuya literally means shaking off, like the dog which shakes off the water after the bath, right? Everything flies off. The dirt which is there in the water, and the water particles, they themselves fly off when the dog shakes. And therefore, after getting this knowledge, this Vidwan takes off both punyam and papam. So this shaking off is what is moksha for me. Now, the question can arise, punya papam vidhuye. Papam vidhuye, I can understand. I have to shake off papam because it has problems. But what about punyam? Why should I shake off punyam? Because from the Vedantic angle, as long as a phalam is there, the papa phalam is there, punya phalam is there. From the Vedantic angle, as long as phalam is there, samsara is there. So papam, how does it affect the bhokta? Papam gives sorrowful experiences when the papa phalam is due. When papa phalam fructifies, it gives sorrowful experiences. What about punyam? Punyam gives happiness when the punya phalam fructifies. Then why is it undesirable? Because when the punya phalam fructification is over, the going away of the ananda, that is manifested as sorrow again. So ultimately, papam gives sorrow when papa phalam comes. Punyam gives sorrow when papa phalam is over. So both give sorrow. So this Vidwan, he shakes off both. Okay, now the question can be, he has shaken off only the phalams, right? What about the underlying cause? The underlying cause is what? Karma alone. And though the mantra doesn't say that, Shankara anticipates that question. And therefore he adds over here in his commentary, he adds samole. He shakes off the punyam and papam samole along with their cause. What is that cause? That is karma. Now you have to further analyze. So he shakes off the punyam and papam along with the karma which causes the punyam and papam, so that phalam doesn't come again. Now you analyze further, what is the cause of karma? We saw earlier, karma is caused by doership, by the kartritvam, the idea that I'm a karta, that is the cause of karma. Because then only you say, I am doing something, because you think that you are the doer. What is the cause of kartritvam? Kartritvam, the cause is that you do not know that you are akarta Brahman. And therefore, ajnanam, ignorance is the cause of kartritvam. And therefore, he shakes off this Vidwan, he shakes off punyam and papam along with ajnanam. That is the meaning of the third line. And once ajnanam is gone, what happens? Kartrutvam is gone. Once kartrutvam is gone, karma will not be there. Once karma is not there, neither punyam nor papam, both of which are karma phalam, both won't be there. And that being so, what happens? Niranjanaha. This Vidwan is free from all impurities. Nirmalaha. He is free from all impurities. The strongest impurity was what? Ajnanam only. And being free from Ajnanam, Paramam Samyam Upaiti. He attains Paramam Upaiti means he attains. Paramam Samyam means the highest oneness. Samyam is sameness. The highest oneness with Paramatma. Total oneness with Paramatma. Now it will not strike us, right? Paramam Samyam we say great. But for the one who is doing Mananam, what should be a question? When he says Paramam Samyam Upayati, what should be a natural question for the one who is doing proper Mananam? Anybody? No?
Who is doing Mananam? Am I doing Mananam?
Are there levels in the Paramam Samyam?
So the question should be, why does Shruti say Paramam?
Oh,
Right? Why does Shruti say? Because everywhere else, what do they say? Aikyam, oneness.
yes.
Why does Shruti over here say Paramam Samyam, total oneness? And that question is a good Bananu question, which most of us will not think of, but Shankara does. So he says there are two types of Samyam. One is Apekshika Samyam, relative similarity, relative oneness. And one is Atyantika Samyam, total oneness. So there is a relative oneness and there is a total oneness. What is relative oneness? So Shankara doesn't explain too much over here. He simply says that this apekshika samyam, this relative nature, the relative oneness will exist in duality where there are two different things, and there may be predominantly several common features among these two things, but there could be at least one or two uncommon features, and therefore it is relatively the same, but not completely the same, right? If we can take the example of a chapati and a paratha, they are relatively the same. What is the distinguishing feature? They are made differently. One is thicker, one is thinner. But the most predominant common feature is what? Both are made from wheat. Okay, so relative sameness is there. Same thing between chapati and maybe different types of chapatis. You can have a square chapati, you can have a round chapati. So relative sameness is there. You're looking at it differently. Now, there is a more involved discussion in this based on some of the Puranas and based on some of the Upanishads. So, in the Puranas, it is said that the Upasaka who goes to Brahmaloka, he acquires special powers. Okay. It is said that, for example, by mere sankalpa, by mere resolution, mental resolution, he can create things. He can actually create objects. And therefore, you see in the Puranas examples of supernatural powers. For example, there is the story of Trishanku. What did Vishwamitra do in Trishanku's case? I hope you know the story.
Swarga.
Vishwamitra created an entire heaven for Trishanku. Right? So objects, here we are taking heaven as an object. So it's an example of supernatural powers. And in Brahma Sutra, Vyasacharya asks, does this mean that a person who has supernatural powers is exactly the same as Ishvara? Samyam Paramam. Vyasa says no. It's a Brahma Sutra discussion. Okay, so we'll be seeing it again when we come to Brahma Sutra. Vyasa says no, he cannot. He cannot be equated to Ishvara because he can create everything. But one thing he cannot create, the Srishti itself. The Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya. That Kartritvam or that Karanatvam, the cause of being the Srishti Karta, Sthiti Karta, and Laya Karta is not available to this Upasaka. So this Upasaka who has got superpowers. And therefore, though he has most of the powers of Ishvara, he does not have that particular power. And therefore, he is aparam samyam. He cannot create the universe. He can create anything within the universe, but he cannot create the universe. He is aparam samyam, not param samyam. That is the differentiation. Okay. In any corporate organization, you know, right? For example, the chairman and the MD have very similar powers, but the chairman always has something which is not available to the MD. Or the MD and the CEO, they have different powers. But the MDs always got something which is not available to CEO. So Samyam Paramam, no, Aparam Paramam we discussed. And here he is saying Paramam Samyam. He says Paramam Samyam means he's got exactly the same power. Okay. Then the question is what? If this jnani is exactly the same, then what is the question which comes up? Which is why we had this discussion anyway. So Vidwan Paramam Samyam Upaiti. He achieves the exact sameness with Ishvara.
Exactly like Ishvara.
So then what is the question that should come up? These sessions really have no meaning if you are not
Can
constantly.
he?
Yeah,
Sorry.
please go on.
Can he create like Ishvara?
Very good. So can he get the Srishti Sthiti Laya power? Is the question. Right? The answer is yes. But when is the question? The answer is yes, he has the power to create. But after he has dropped his individual body, because what happens at that point of time, when the individual body is dropped, this Vidwan, this Jnani, his three bodies, we say they are destroyed, right? So they are not available anymore. But what has happened to the Jnani? He has merged into Ishvara. So Ishvara Shariratrayam absorbs his three bodies, individual bodies, and the consciousness principle merges into Brahman. So ultimately, this Videha Mukta, if you have to think of him as existing, and we're talking about Vyavaharika, right? If this Videha Mukta is existing in the Vyavaharika plane, if you say he exists, then he is existing, but as Ishvara. That is the Paramam Samyam. And therefore, Ishvara has the powers to create. So this Vidwan also, who has become Ishvara in all respects, that is why Paramam Samyam. He has become Ishvara, and therefore, he has power to create. Remember here, you have to understand very carefully, there is no separate Vidwan over here anymore. We are using the word he and Vidwan for the purpose of explaining. But the moment the Videha Mukta's body drops, there is no Vidwan anymore. Individuality is destroyed by moksha. Okay. Then the question is, why cannot he create anything while he has a jiva body? While he has the human body, why is it not possible for him to create? What is the answer?
Prarabdha.
Limitation of the body.
Limitation of the human body. Because he has a human body, he cannot create. Remember, as Brahman, as Atma, all of you are this, have Paramam Samyam with Ishvara, with Brahman, right? But as long as you have the individual body, it is the individual upadhi which limits your powers. Right? When Ishvara takes birth as a avatara, the physical body restricts the powers. And therefore, that's one very important point which you need to understand. The physical body restricts your powers when you take, even if as Ishvara, I have taken birth as a particular avatar. That avatar's powers are restricted by the body. Okay. Then the question can come. In the Shastram, we often say, or in fact, Shastram often gives two definitions, Shastram says, a jnani on Videha Mukti merges with Ishvara. And Shastram also says, a jnani on Videha Mukti merges with Brahman. How do you reconcile? You have to look at the two realities, two satyams. Jnani merging into Ishvara is correct. When Shruti says that, Shruti is presenting the viewpoint from the Vyavaharika Satyam. Because Ishvara is Vyavaharika Satyam. But when Shruti says Jnani merges into Brahman, then there is no Vyavaharika Satyam at all. So Shruti is making the statement from the point of Paramarthika Satyam. So coming back to the two-bird example, you have to understand moksha as what? Understanding that the second bird doesn't exist at all. Second bird is only a reflection. That understanding that the jiva part is only a reflection and OC is all that is really there. That is moksha. Okay. Now we will come to the fourth mantra. Prano yeshaya sarva bhutair vibhati.
Prano
Sarvabhutaiर्vibhati
Vijanan vidwan bhavate nativadi.
Vijanan
bhavate nativadi
Atma krida atmarati kriyavan.
Atmakrida atmaratihi kriyavan
Esha brahma vidam varishtaha.
Esha brahma vidam varishtaha.
Okay. So, here the discussion on the jnanam is more or less complete. And now Shruti is talking about the jnana phala. So, prana here, esha pranaha. So, prana here is samashti prana. Samashti prana is got another name. What is that?
Hiranyagarbha.
Hiranyagarbha. Okay, so prana here refers to Hiranyagarbha. And this we must remember, because whenever the word prana is used in Shastram, it can refer to Hiranyagarbha, it can refer to Pancha Prana also. How do you make out which is what? You can of course look at Shankara Bhashyam, he will tell you. But if you don't have it readily available, how do you make out which reference is to Hiranyagarbha, which reference is to Pancha Prana? You should be able to make out, right?
Because of the context.
Because of the context. Excellent, Jones. You always have to look at the context. And that's why I keep on saying context, context, context. In any Shastric study, you have to look at the context. If the context is not available immediately on the mantra itself, you look at the previous mantras. You look at the whole section. What is the subject matter? Okay. Now, so Ishaha Pranaha is what Sarva bhutaihi vibhati. This prana, this shines, sarva bhuta, vibhati is shines. Sarva bhutai is all beings. So all beings is, there is a very famous definition in Shastra. Brahmadi stamba paryante. Means what? I've used it several times. Sarva
From the
bhut
very blade of grass to
Uh-huh.
to Lord
to
Brahman.
the to
Highest level.
Right. Now again, a small grammatical point. There are two b's in Sanskrit, okay, and in Hindi also actually, b and bha. So when you say stamba paryante, it is stamba, the b, not the bha. The first b, not the second b. Stamba means blade of grass. Stamba means pillar. Okay, so one is inanimate and one is animate. But here, since you are saying shines in all beings, you can take either meaning. If you say stamba, then you are saying this Hiranyagarbha, he is reflected, shines reflected in all living beings as what? As the consciousness principle. And if you say stamba, you are saying all living beings. Brahmadi means is living being, conscious being. Stamba is inanimate being. And therefore, you are giving a wider meaning from all inanimate, all insentient and sentient beings. Either meaning is correct. But in the second meaning, you have to take it as consciousness principle as well as the existence principle, because pillar doesn't have consciousness. The pillar has existence. One is a more restricted meaning, one is a wider meaning. Either way is all right, because Hiranyagarbha is having both consciousness and existence as part of it. So appears in the form of all beings and all things. So essentially this Hiranya, Sarva Bhutaihi Vibhati means this is all Nama Rupa, this Hiranyagarbha exists as. And if you see that context, then prana has to mean only Hiranyagarbha. It cannot be Pancha Prana. Okay. Okay. Now all these names and forms, Nama Rupa put together, remember is called, got another name which we call Maya. The Maya is the container, but the content is Brahman. This we must always remember. And therefore, Vidwan Vijanan, the wise person who has got this knowledge, how? By doing Karma Yoga, we have to keep on repeating this, by doing Karma Yoga, by doing Upasana Yoga, by doing Shravanam, by doing Mananam. In short, who has done all the necessary sadhanas, right? So, unless you do sadhana, you cannot become a Vidwan. So, the son of a Vidwan does not become a Vidwan. One becomes a Vidwan by understanding the Shastram. To understand the Shastram, you have to have a teacher. What does the teacher teach you? Shankara says clearly, he teaches you that you are Brahman. And once you are Brahman, Sakshat Brahman, once you know. So, Aham asmi iti vijanan. That is what Shankara says. Knowing that I am Brahman. I am Aham asmi. I am Brahma. Aham asmi. Knowing that I am that Brahman. He makes a statement over here. Bhavate nativadihi. That person, he becomes na nativadi. Nativadi is na ativadi. Vadi is a person who talks. Ativadi is a person who talks too much. Nativadi is a person who does not talk too much. Okay, so one meaning, a more common meaning of Nativadi is that this Vidwan, this Jnani, once he has understood that he is Brahman, his, talking, his conversations become less. He doesn't talk too much. So that is one of the, and the more accepted meaning. Shankara gives another meaning. Shankara has to give another meaning for everything. So Shankara gives another meaning. He says, this person, he talks about everything else. Everything else means what? Everything else but Brahman. And in his discussions about everything else, he wants to prove his point. So he continuously crosses limits. Shilam atiti, he says. Shilam is the limit, the border. So this person, this ativadi, okay, now we are not talking about the jnani. Shankara has defined ativadi. Ativadi is the person who talks about everything but Brahman. And in an attempt to prove his points, he keeps on crossing limits and offending people. He brings in external subjects, irrelevant ones. But this ativadi, what does he do? He knows everything is Brahman, right? And therefore, with that knowledge, whatever he is talking about, what is he talking about? Brahman only. And therefore, a person who talks only about Brahman, knowing that everything is Brahman alone, there is no question of him crossing any limits. There is no question of him talking about anything else. He is not a Ativadi, right? So some people, when they talk about Vedantics, I've heard this very often with a lot of people that who don't like, let us say, scriptures, and they have a friend, or worse still, they have a spouse who is a Vedantic, and that spouse who is a sincere Vedantic student, he, all of us, right? The moment you get a chance, you'll start talking about Brahman. So some people will say, this person, he does not talk about anything except Brahman. And Shankara is giving a very fine point here. When someone says that this Vedantic does not talk about Brahman, what is the implication?
There is nothing other than Brahman.
He is Brahman. There is nothing to talk. Sarvam Brahman.
Yeah, so that person who says that, no, this person talks only about Brahman, that person is implying that there is something other than Brahman. And Shankara says, therefore, that person is Ajnani. Because when you know that everything is Brahman, whatever that person talks about it is Brahman only. So when Brahman is understood as Sarvam, very important point for us, especially Hindus, or a better word is Sanatana Dharmis or Vaidikas. When Brahman is understood, remember the distinction between secular and sacred disappears. There is no secular anymore. Because everything is Brahman, everything is sacred. And that is why, in our original constitution, this word secular was not there. It was added by people who didn't understand this difference. So for a person who is Brahman, there is no more secular, there is no more sacred. Everything is sacred. There is no more dharmika, there is no more laukika, there is no worldly duties and dharmic duties. Everything is dharmic only. And therefore, Shankara's point here is that when are you a Ativadi? You are a Ativadi whenever you are talking about Anatma without understanding that the substratum of that Anatma is Atma alone. So then the question will come, does it mean that as a Vedantin, as a Jnani, I will never discuss Anatma? What is the answer to that?
We may discuss Sanatma, but we will be knowing that it is not different from.
Exactly. So Shankara asks the question, Atitya kim vaded? How will he talk about something other than Atma? Because for him, everything is Atma. So that's a question, understanding you must have. That even as a Vedantin, if you are talking about other things, as long as you don't lose sight of the fact that everything is Brahman alone, there is no problem, right? The other, that's of course a very, technical discussion on Ativadi. The simple understanding of Ativadi is that talking less is an indication of assimilation of Vedanta. So the person who, as his understanding grows in Vedanta, the need to talk becomes less. So he will talk only when it is necessary. And what do you do with the time you save from not talking? You convert that time to Nididhyasanam time. Very profound little interpretation. Nativadi. Okay. Then Atma Kridaha. So there are two words here if you see. One is Atma Kridaha, one is Atma Ratihi. So a technical differentiation is made. Kridaha means it requires an external object, right? And Ratihi means it doesn't require an external object. Both are enjoyment levels. So Atma Kridaha means he enjoys everything as Atma. And here the implication is that there is external object which he's enjoying. So if he's eating a strawberry ice cream, this Vidwan, this Nativadi, when he eats strawberry ice cream, it is Atma Kridaha. The enjoyment comes from himself, the Atma, but there is an association with the external object, right? And what is Atma Ratihi? Atma Ratihi, he has no object, external object, but he is enjoying himself. By himself, he does not depend upon anything. So Atma Ratihi is an expression of Purnatvam. Atma Kridaha, here it means that this person can also enjoy the Vishaya Ananda. He is not ruling out Vishaya Ananda. So Atma Ratihi, Atma Krida together means that he enjoys whether there are external objects or not, he enjoys. And Shankara defines very clearly in his Bhashyam, Krida means Bahya Sadhana Sapeksha. The dependence on an external object. That is, Krida is Bahya Sadhana Saha Apeksha. That is, you are depending upon the Bahya Sadhanam, external object. Ratihi means Sadhana Nirapeksha. He doesn't have any external means. Ratihi is basically self-ananda from yourself. You don't need anything else. Atma Kridaha means he's deriving ananda from the world. So put together, he's happy without the world, he's happy with the world also. And then Kriyavan. So Kriyavan is a person who does kriyas, karmas, duties. So this is from the Vyavaharika angle. He's saying very clearly that he's also a Kriyavan. Not only is he happy with or without the world, he's also a Kriyavan, which means that as a Grihastha, if he's a Grihastha, he follows all the Grihastha duties. As a sannyasi, if he is a sannyasi, he follows all the sannyasi duties in relation to the world. So Vyavaharika duties he follows. Dharma he follows, so that there is no confusion in society. Right? Earlier, the only thing is the motive is different. Before he became a jnani, or before a sadhaka becomes a jnani, you are expected to be a dharmic person. For what purpose? For getting the sadhana chatushtayam necessary to come to jnana. Now, having got that, he has got moksha, he has come to jnanam, done shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam, and got moksha. But he continues to be kriyavan. What is the purpose now? The purpose is for the benefit of society. Right? So this kriyavan is a very special word. Even after getting jnanam, he continues his lifestyle as before. If he is a sannyasi, he continues the sannyasi lifestyle. If he is a grihastha, he continues a grihastha lifestyle. Very important there. Nothing changes in his life. Right? He doesn't suddenly get halos over his head or floats. He is still exactly as he is. Who knows whether he is a jnani or not? Only he knows. Okay, now here there's a question often asked. You are saying this jnani continues to do karma, right? What is the question that should come up?
If he's a jnani, he
What
knows
about the
not
karma
body.
phala?
So who's doing the karma?
From the karma that he does.
If he is a
That he
jnani,
knows that.
who is doing the karma, right? So what is the answer? Jnanam and kartrutvam cannot exist. But jnanam and karma can exist. You know the difference? Jnanam and kartrutvam cannot exist. Jnanam and karma can definitely exist. Why?
Different levels of reality.
There are different levels of reality.
Worship is dropped.
Right.
Different.
So Shankara here explains that point with a very pithy statement. Kriyavan kartrutva vishishtaha iti na niyamaha. There is no rule that the doer should have doership. Very, very potent sentence. You can continue to do, but don't say that I am doing it for this sake. Right? And Shankara here mentions that this statement, it negates the view of a particular school of thought known as Jnana Karma Samucchavadi. Okay, what do the Jnana Karma Samucchavadis do? They take these two words Atmaratihi and Kriyavan as a mandate. They say that Shruti is saying here that you have to be Atma. To become an Atmaratihi, you have to be a Kriyavan, which means you get Jnanam. Atmaratihi is equated with Jnanam. So you get Jnanam because you cannot revel in yourself unless you have Jnanam. So they join these two and say that what Shruti is saying here is that unless you combine Kriya with Jnanam, you cannot get moksha. So Shankara says this is not true. The sentence has to, these particular sentences have to be interpreted like we just did. And therefore he says, Kriyavan kartatva vishishtaha iti na niyamaha. There is no rule that the doer of an action should take himself as having kartatva. And then the last line of the mantra is, Eshaha Brahmavidam Varishtaha. Such a jnani is the greatest. Eshaha. Eshaha refers to the jnani who has been talked about in the earlier three lines. Such a jnani is the greatest among all the jnanis. Why? Because he is Varishta. He is the greatest among all the jnanis. Because he is not just a jnani, he is also established in jnanam. He is a jnana nishtha. Right? So a guna atita, the name is guna atita in Gita, also called sthita prajnaha. Both of these refer to the jnana nishtha. Okay, remember here that we are saying here that the one who has understood the Veda is a Brahma Vidam, is a Jnana Nishtha. Now there are other texts which talk about different stages like Brahmavid, Brahmavidvaraha, Brahmavidvaryan, Brahmavarishta. Brahmavarishta is always the superlative, the uttermost. And therefore, some people say that there are different types of jnanis. One is a Brahmavid, one is a Brahmavidaha, one is a Brahmavidvaryan, and so on and so forth, right? And the highest one is Brahmavarishtaha. And here, the Shruti says, such a Brahmavida, Brahmavid, word is what? Brahmavid. Such a Esha Brahmavid. Brahmavid means one who knows Brahman. Means one who has done, who is a Shrotriya. Brahmavid, with the suffix with simply means knower of. So Brahmavid is one who has known Brahman. How do you know Brahman? By studying Shastra. So Brahmavid is Shrotriya. And then he says Varishtham. How can this Brahmavid be equal to Varishtham? Especially in the light of the other texts which talk about differences. Brahmavid, Brahmavidvarya, Brahmavidvaryan, Brahmavidvarishtaha, Brahmavarishtaha, and so on. The answer is that in Vedanta, we don't accept that there is a gradation in Jnana. Brahmavid means simply I know I am Brahman. No, I cannot have a gradation in that, right? I cannot partially know I am Brahman, or I cannot firmly know I am Brahman. I can superlatively know I am Brahman. Either I know I am Brahman or I don't know I am Brahman. There are only two things. And Brahmavid means he knows that he is Brahman. Then what is this? This gradation belongs to what we call Pratibandha Nivrittihi. So you have, for example, even after you have done Shravanam and Mananam. So Brahmavid is the nature of the person, is the status of the person after Shravanam Mananam. Because Shravanam teaches you that you are Brahman. Mananam, you do all the doubt removal. And at the end of the session of Shravanam and Mananam, or thousands of sessions, let us say, you have no doubts that you are Brahman. That is Brahmavid. But you might still not get the benefit of this knowledge. Why? Because of various habitual thinking patterns, various problems that you have, anger, jealousy, which have not been completely removed. Okay. So all those negative tendencies are pratibandhas, obstacles to the total assimilation of jnanam, obstacles to become Brahmanist. And therefore, you after jnanam also, after Shravanam Mananam also, you do nididhyasanam. Unless you are 100% sadhana chatushtayam, a person necessarily needs nididhyasanam after Mananam stage. And nididhyasanam has two aspects. One is to keep on reminding oneself of Aham Brahmasmi. Another is to chip away at all those small obstacles, mental obstacles, which are stopping you from getting the jnana phalam. And that nididhyasanam is a long-term process, chipping away slowly at all these pratibandhas, all these obstacles. Therefore, these terms, Brahmavid, Brahmavidvaraha, Brahmavidvaryan, Brahmavarishtaha, they refer to a gradation in the removal of the obstacles. And Brahmavarishtaha is one where totally the obstacles have been removed. Until then, whenever you hear these terms, remember that if the person is Shrotriya, is Brahmavid, he is a Brahmavid, all right. But slowly, he's working on obstacles. And the Brahmavid has to ultimately become Brahmavarishta through Nididhyasanam. This is the point being made. Now with this, the teaching itself has been summarized. And from the next mantra onwards, we will see the Jnana Phalam, which we can do in the next class. Until then, any questions, you are most welcome. Okay.
Om sir.
Yes,
Does the
Vanita.
journey become even more, even longer? That from Jnana we have to go to Brahma Varishtam.
Oh, Jnana-nishtha is
So,
Brahmavarishta.
Nididhyasana
Jnana-nishtha and Brahmavarishta are interchangeable words. But yes, from Jnanam to Jnana-nishtha, it's, anybody's guess how long it will take. How many,
Endless,
births.
endless journey,
I wouldn't say it's endless because
seemingly so.
Goal is there.
you know the goal.
Target is there.
There might be a downfall also due to Pratibandha.
Sorry?
There might be a downfall also due to the Pratibandha.
No, once you have this, what they call,
Promise.
strong knowledge,
Escalator.
firm knowledge that I am Brahman, the wrong downfall won't be there. That's what Krishna says in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that you will never have a downfall. But how long the journey takes, it is, depending upon your own efforts. Whether you are born into a good family which will give you the effort or not, that Krishna has already confirmed that yes, you will be born. So once you are on the spiritual path, I'm saying Krishna on the spiritual path. I'm not saying that once you are a Brahmavid. Krishna doesn't say that you have to be a Brahmavid for me to give you all the necessary environment. In 6th chapter, if you remember, he said, no, once you are on the spiritual path. But here we are talking about a Brahmavid, the one who is a Jnani already. For him, of course, some more time will be required. But remember that as a Brahmavid, you will always remember that, yes, I am Brahman. So there will be disturbances in your mind. There will be negative thoughts. There will be anger. There will be jealousy. There will be bitterness. But even if you are, occasionally overcome by those emotions, you will always have the capacity, at least after that immediate, flow of emotion is over, to step back and say that, that was only an emotion. That was my mind. The more you dwell on that, all that is nididhyasanam only. Every time emotion hits you and, you lose your temper, you have lost your temper. Nothing
Yes.
much can be done about that.
That's exactly what happens.
Yes, sir.
So that's exactly what happens.
You step back afterwards and say, okay, fine, this should not happen next.
Yes.
You do that sufficient
Yes.
times and you'll see the difference. Nobody ever said it was easy, right? But you will find that that emotion is no longer capable of causing you lasting damage. Today, it sits as resentment in your head. Then it won't sit as resentment. You
Yes,
will
sir. The
dismiss it.
FIR.
Yes, you will dismiss it saying that, okay,
Yes.
fine, it was mind. Don't think that the Jnani doesn't have emotions. Jnani's mind is in fact more sensitive because Jnanam gives you higher sensitivity of mind. So right now you are only affected by your own sorrows. So later on, the sorrows of everybody else will make you sad also.
So the jnani will be able to rationally analyze all the emotions and strike
All you have
off.
to do is say that this is the mind and I am not the mind.
Mm.
Doesn't mean that you will not feel sorrow. In a sorrowful mind, you are bound to have disturbances.
Om Acharya.
Yes, Krish.
Acharya, if somebody has completed Shravanam, Mananam, and the Nididhyasanam process is still not complete, still going on, and the body drops, will he still be born?
Of course.
Okay.
Because you've got pratibandha, right?
Okay.
The problem with the pratibandha is that it might weaken your faith in the scripture,
We are all concerned about ourselves, Acharya.
Just remember the Sarvam Brahman,
Yes.
If you say, I am going to be reborn, it means you're not accepted that you're Brahman. Very, very, potent point. As long as you say, I'm concerned about my rebirth, you are not Brahman because you're not accepted yourself as Brahman. That is your Nididhyasanam point. In fact, that's for Mananam. A person who has completed Mananam will never say that, why should I not be reborn? Why should I be reborn? Because he knows he's Brahman. Brahman cannot be reborn, can he? When you say that I may be reborn, what are you saying? I am not Brahman, which means your Mananam is not over. Push.
Ji Acharya, I'm just smiling right now.
Yeah. So if you think that you're going to be reborn, just remember your process is Mananam also. I'm not saying don't do Nididhyasanam, but Mananam requires, in fact, that we have this whole Brahma Sutra chapter. Okay. The entire chapter 2 of Brahma Sutra is a very long chapter, is a Mananam chapter. So ultimately, if you have any doubts at all upon the teaching, that should be addressed by chapter 1 of Brahma Sutra. If you have any doubts about whether you are Brahman or not, the Prameya part of it. There are Pramana Samshaya and Pramaya Samshaya. Pramana Samshaya should be addressed by chapter 1. What is Shruti saying? Pramaya Samshaya, how can I be Brahman? Should be addressed by chapter 2. There's a long way to go. We are only on Mundaka Upanishad.
So the Mananam and Nididhyasanam go simultaneously.
Yeah, absolutely. Nididhyasanam, remember, addresses certain negative aspects also.
Right. And when there's nothing more for Mananam, that is.
Then you start with Nidhyasana.
Hmm.
But as the point being, limited point made by Kush is, will I be reborn? As the answer to that is, if you are saying I'm going to be reborn, then your Mananam is not over.
Right, sir.
Ji Acharya ji.
Okay. With this, we'll stop for today. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you.
Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you, Acharya ji.
Thank